Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whole Wellness Mama Summit, where we are unlocking the healthiest, less stressed mom in you using strategies from various wellness experts. I'm Amy Nesbitt, and I am excited to talk about some big, everyday impacting topics like communicating better with our kids, healthy screen use, and when are our kids ready for devices with Adam Brooks. He's a former special ed director turned college professor and motivational speaker, working on helping build better communication skills in this digital world amongst companies, schools, and families. He has some really great experience, and you can hear his passion just helping kids the way he speaks. So I feel like I'm already not with the times. So I'm scared when my kids get to a little bit older. And so I'm
Sure.
always eager to hear more about developing healthier habits. So welcome, Adam.
Thank you so much for having me. Isn't it interesting that we're concerned of keeping up with our kids, but I don't know that my parents felt too concerned of keeping up with me. So
Well, I do a lot
it's
of tech
different.
support right now.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
So I don't know what that's going to look like for me.
Yeah, I don't think my parents knew how my pager worked. So
Yeah, yeah. And I work for a tech company, so they ask me all these things. I'm like, I'm not the engineering side, but well,
exactly.
yeah. For some of you that some of everybody's meeting with you for the first time, can you tell
Yep,
them your quick story of where you came to where you are now?
totally. So I'm a third generation Phoenix kid. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm the first generational college student, though. My family, my father worked construction, my mom was a hairdresser, and I went to college. And really, I was very lucky, very blessed. I was a gifted kid, but I was also the gifted kid who talked too much. So there was some innate challenges with that. And I learned that when I became a teacher. I got everything back that I gave, all the grief I gave to my teachers. I got it all back when I became a teacher. So I get
Oh,
it.
that karma is.
Oh, it's real. My bachelor's degree is in public speaking. And so then I went on to get a master's in leadership. And then I pursued another master's in special education. So I worked in special education for about 14 years, but I worked mainly with kids who had minor learning disabilities, right? Like dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADD, ADHD, maybe a little bit on the spectrum disorder, and then uh, really try to help them get through chemistry, help them get through world history, and kind of worked with them because for me, those were kids who knew they learned differently than the kid next to them. So my goal was for that kid to have a really healthy self-worth when they left school. I I always said I was a bad teacher because I didn't care if they got the math problem right, but I cared if they were a jerk or not. Like I don't care when you leave here that you can write a beautiful 5 paragraph essay. I care if you can share and be honest about your needs and how we can meet those needs. And so I drilled into my kid's head like, yes, you have this disability. Yes, it makes you different. Yes, it also makes you beautiful. Yes, it also makes you outstanding. Yes, it can also be a strength. Like all these things are yes and not either or. And so, really trying to build that in school. From there, I taught college, working with future teachers on how to work with special needs and special education. I also taught public speaking at one of the local colleges here. And that kind of led me into this consulting speaking world where I was being asked to go to conferences and talk. And then parents were finding me afterwards and saying, hey, how do I talk to my kid about this tough topic? Or how do I connect to my kid this way? And I didn't really know that I had an answer other than saying, well, you just ask them, right? You just go and say, hey, I saw this on your phone. What's the deal, bro? What are you doing? But I understand that's not everyone's approach. That doesn't always. I sometimes live in the perfect world where that works great, and we all have a leave it to beaver moment, and then it's like, gee golly, we're good. I get that. So Arizona had been working on some teen suicide issues that we were having here as a state, and so I launched Drive-A-Logue. Drive-A-Logue is a family game for the parents to play on the way to school that asks proactively social issue questions. There's some fun questions in there, so it's not all intense. Sometimes it's like, listen, I just want a day off. So there's definitely like, if you could invent an ice cream flavor, what would it be? There's some fun stuff. But then there's questions like, if you're experiencing drama with a friend, what do you do? And that's a really great way to talk to parents and kids about those kinds of things. So that way it's not you bringing it up, it's Drive-A-Logue bringing it up. So it kind of gives you a little scapegoat.
And I
So
love that.
I've been doing that. That's where I'm at now.
And I love that you have it Drive-A-Logue, because I hear so many parents say we have really great conversations in the car when we're not looking at each other, right? So
Totally. The research says kids will talk for longer and stronger if they aren't forced to make direct eye contact.
yeah,
And I grew up in the generation which was look in my eyes and tell me. And it was like, I'm so sorry.
I'm kind of stereotyping, but I grew up in Asian culture where you didn't really address everything all the time. So,
Totally.
just depending on how you've grown up, right? And also
Yeah.
how we want to have things different for our kids. And I think it's great.
Yeah. We always sometimes we bring some of that baggage into our parenting. And then sometimes we're able to go, this is what I want to change, this is what I want to do different. And we can overcorrect sometimes too, right?
Absolutely.
Where then you're like, all right, I went from this to this. Let's find some middle ground.
Mhm. I also love that when you were sharing your story, you emphasized raising people that like are good humans, right? That can
Yeah.
advocate for themselves. It's not just about what score did you get, because I think that's so easy for us as parents, right? To push, push, push,
Yeah.
and really at the heart of it, it's, are we raising people to make good decisions? Are we raising people that are smart in not just the academic way?
Listen, I grew up a firstborn perfectionist. So I put all those expectations on myself. And so I looked at these students in school who were like, I just don't get it. And I had such empathy for them. And I wanted them to know what I did, took me years to learn. So if I could do that, it was like talking to my little mini me, right? So really, it was kind of, I wish I said I followed a model or there was a reason why I did it. It really was just like, I'm so sorry that you have to experience what it feels like to not get an answer right. Um, I was lucky. That stuff came naturally to me.
Yeah.
So, but I also got my first C in college, and I thought it was the end of the world. So,
I feel that so deeply.
yeah, no, exactly. It's like, oh, there's other smart kids here too. Where? That's
Yeah.
so crazy.
Oh, yeah. So you've done a lot of work with students who feel overly anxious or feel a lot of pressure. So what are the biggest concerns or things that we as parents should be aware of as we raise the next generation to have healthier coping mechanisms?
So it's really interesting. I heard the other day that anxiety and stress is a luxury because we have time to think about all the things we need to do and that kind of stuff. And so I think what we can do is a couple things. So I think there's a little bit of keeping our kids busy with healthy things, right? So a lot of times we will take away certain stuff from them, and then they just sit in their room by themselves, and that just increases anxiety, increases stress, increases that little hamster wheel in our brain that goes around and around and around that our kids have too. And so if we can say, hey, not this, but that is really going to be a helpful thing that we can do, is this idea of like replacement therapy, right? Like, let's go ahead and play this game together, or let's work on this. And so I think a lot of times it's not necessarily keeping our kids busy, but it's giving them options of activities that are healthy and helpful. Um, I hear this from a lot of parents that when we're doing that, I don't get to, I may still feel anxious, but because I'm moving while I'm feeling anxious, it's not as impactful. It's when I'm sitting alone in my room feeling anxious that those kind of little monsters can come creep in a little bit more. So I think that's one thing we can do that's really helpful. I think another thing is we don't share our own anxieties and stresses with our kids. We say things like, if, oh, you're stressed now, oh, just wait till you get to my, right? Like, I'll show you stress. And that's not helpful ever, because they're kids and they don't understand what, and they maybe shouldn't understand those adult things yet either. So really being able to just say, oh, I've noticed that you are having a hard time right now. I would love, what do you do when you feel that way? Or this is how I felt when I have things on my plate that I'm overwhelmed by. This is what I try. You want to try it together? This is what we can do, right? So things like walking together in the mornings, things like taking breaks together, things like eating together and having our kids make the food they're eating is a great way to kind of get them moving and eating at the same. It's great. It's when it becomes this gimme, right?
Yeah.
And they're not participating. So then there's not as much value in the participating. And so all those things can really kind of help with some of those big feelings, I think.
Gosh, I love that last part where you said incorporate them into like the cooking. That's like one thing, right? And I love cooking, which is why I have my YouTube channel. We have people that are coming to talk about cooking and food as well. But I think you're absolutely right in that it also helps. It helps in so many ways, right? One, they don't feel entitled, like things just get handed to them. Everything is made for them. Plus, it becomes like a healthy foundation for their relationship with food, for their relationship with eating healthier things, when they're more aware of what goes into things, and then just participating in the family, like that's just is, right? It's not forced. It's not.
Well, I see a lot of let me as the parent do this for you as a child, and it's a gift, right? And that comes from our own maybe struggles, right? We want to feel needed, we want to feel wanted, we want to give to those we love. I get that. I totally get that. And yet there's a different thing that happens when you say our family is a team and we all have our parts to play, but we're all going to play them together. I'm not going to give this to you. We're going to accomplish this together. And there's something stronger and more impactful that happens when the family becomes a team that attacks an issue, even if the issue is snack time. Right? It doesn't have to, we always think it has to be like a big, we're going to pay off our family debt, or we're just going to feed ourselves.
Yeah.
But we're going to do it in a way that we are doing it, not a consumer mentality of, well, what's next? Well, entertain me? Where are we going? Why can't we do this? Why can't I eat this? What are you ordering for dinner? I want this. I want, McDonald's, chicken nuggets.
Yeah. And if we can do that with the small things, I mean, I call it a small thing, but some families, it's a big deal, right? Meals are a big deal. But if you can do that with the smaller things, then as they get older, it becomes bigger things, and that foundation is there. So I think that's amazing. Yeah.
We definitely have a little bit of a struggle. I keep hearing from companies that I work with who chirp in my ear and say that our kids are struggling with some resiliency as they get older, and some of that, the ability to see stress as a motivator, not as an inhibitor. And so we can move from eustress to distress. And we really like eustress. Eustress is what got me on this call. It's what got me up in the morning. It's what made me take a shower, right? It's good, healthy stress that we see as a challenge. And so if we can kind of build up some of those muscles, then when they see distress, they're not as easy to run.
I love that. I mean, I think we've already touched on a lot of these things, but good communication is fundamental in any relationship, but especially with our kids, right? And I think this also ties into why you created Drive-A-Logue, so it makes it easier for parents to have various conversations throughout the day. Where are the areas you see parents struggle the most if we haven't already covered it?
That's a really good question. So what I see parents struggle the most is we either overshare or we undershare. And we are less curious about what our kids think, and we're more trying to influence them on what we want them to think. And I think some of that's normal, right? I think I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that can be a healthy, good thing. And yet it leaves room for kids to go, well, what do I think, right? Like, how do I practice my own thoughts? How do I practice critical thinking in a healthy way if I'm never critically thinking? And I sure as heck want my kids to practice that at home first. So asking those, being curious and saying, why did you say that? Or what makes you think that? Or tell me more, right? To steal Brené Brown's 3 words. Tell me more. Like, I want to know, I want to hear it. Like, let's keep going. And so I think that's where we struggle, because we can overshare and we can tell our kids things that maybe are too personal, or we're want to be really close and friendly with them because maybe our parents weren't as friendly with us. And so we want that kind of pendulum, but we swing it too far. And now we're their chauffeur, their best friend, their manicurist, their right. Like we're doing too much a little bit. But then there's also that where it's like, I don't ever want my kid to know that I'm struggling. And I don't think that's healthy either. So there's this middle ground where we can say, yes, it's okay you experience these things, but let's talk about it. Let's be curious about it. How do you feel about what you learned in school today? Or they come home and they'll, they always say crazy things. They're like, this happened in school. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then what? Like, let's keep this, like, I want to hear more. Like, let's be engaged in your life.
I remember when we first talked to you had said we often ask very vague questions, right? Like, how was your day at school? You just reminded me of that when you were talking about oversharing.
Yeah. Well, the problem with vague questions is it leaves our kids a little helpless. And so what I mean by that is when you say, how was your day? They've got to run through their mind everything that happened that day. And then they've got to put it into categories of good and bad, positive and negative. And then they got to figure out what they were willing to share, what they're not willing to share. And all that extra thinking after a long day at school, they're like, fine, good. They're done because all those, it's too much. So if we're really hyper specific, if we get really detailed in our question, I don't have to let my brain free range as much to find the answer. So I can say, tell me something funny that happened in math class. And they go, all right, math class, it's an hour. Boom, what happened? All right, these things happened. Okay, it wasn't funny, but maybe this happened or that happened or my pencil broke or whatever. And so now we're at least getting more specific. And so it helps their brain not feel so overwhelmed when they sit in our car. Because how was your day is a real rough question. I've even stopped answering with my friends. They'll say, how's your day? And I go, give me a second to check in. And I sit there for a second going, how was my day? Because this is my fourth meeting and I've been driving in the car for 4 hours. So it's like, let me check in on myself. Oh, my day's actually been good.
Yeah. No, it's interesting when I think about it for myself too. Like you were saying, right? Like, what do my friends say to me? And then also at the end of the day, you're more tired, right? And so you're less inclined to go into all the details. And yet,
well, that's why
we ask that same thing for our kids.
No, you're exactly right. And that's why having hard conversations, difficult conversations, or having really important like vision or mission conversations, they don't really go well at night. They are better for the next day. I mean, there's stories of all of us who had to have a define the relationship talk with someone we were dating, and we chose to do it after the date at 9 o'clock at night, and it didn't go well. No, surprise. Go figure. Yeah, because you spent all day expending your emotional energy, and by the end you're like, yeah, I'm not doing this. So there's something about having those conversations in the morning on the way to school that I feel like at least opens it up. And then for Drive-A-Logue, I love the idea of them after you pick them up. Now you get to revisit that question you talked about in the morning and go, all right, they had time to think about it. Now what would the answer be?
Does it change? Is it the same? Is it?
Yeah, maybe it's the same and that's okay. And to be fair, to be really honest, kids in education today are sitting for a really long time and they're expending a lot of brain energy and not a lot of body energy. So you still may get not a great answer if you ask really specific questions. There's just a lot kind of combating that question because of how they're spending their day. So
that segues pretty well into perhaps screen time and sedentary life, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a real thing. Kids are growing up in a very different atmosphere from at least when I grew up. How should we be thinking about healthy screen use for our kids?
So I wrote a mini book maybe about 5-6 years ago called The Social Media Handbook, an adult guide to the digital life of a teen. And the reason why I wrote it was because I saw families either saying yes to screen time and yes to phones and yes to iPads, but without any type of boundaries or regulations. Or I saw parents saying no to all of it, right? And so for me, again, I wanted some middle ground. I wanted to be able to say to someone, yes, but, right? If you want a device, if you want screen time, the answer can be yes, but there's some boundaries around that. There's some parameters about that. What we're seeing is screen time is harming our kids. I mean, there's really no way we can skirt around it. It's hurting our kids physically and emotionally. So we're already seeing some issues with eyesight. We're seeing issues with um, necks, backs, chiropractic stuff for kids. But we're also seeing the number one medical issue facing kids with screen time is sleep deprivation. It's the number one issue around the country. Well, I read a research report out of Pew, Research, and they talked about how it was like 55% of kids self-report that they're only getting 4 hours or less of sleep at night.
4 hours or less,
Yeah.
holy smokes.
If you're up all night on your devices and you're not getting, what's happening is your brain's not able to deal with stress, anxiety, depression. Those things you can't deal with because your brain's just trying to survive, especially a growing brain. And so when neuroscientists are telling us that adults shouldn't be in front of a screen an hour before bed and an hour after we wake up, how much more so is that true for kids whose brain isn't even done growing? So there's some scary stuff with screen time, but there's some answers too. Regulating it, the amount of time they spend in proportion to movement. So being able to say, if you move for this many minutes, is how much you earn. I grew up in a day and age when we got 20 minutes of computer time on Fridays if we were good as a class. And even then it was a green screen that had Oregon Trail on it. So
Oregon Trail.
We got to find where in the world Carmen Sandiego was.
We must be very similar in age.
I think so. Yeah. So I think that screen time can be a big problem. The other issue, though, is that can we just have a really honest conversation about devices?
Yeah.
And that's not that we haven't been. Sorry.
Absolutely. Was
I know. What happens is we give our kids devices. And why do we give them devices? We say it's because we want them to have safety.
Safe. Yeah.
Yep. That's the number one issue. Be safe. We want to know where you are. We want you to be able to call us when you need us. It's for safety. But then our kid gets a D and we take their phone away. So then is it for safety or is it not for safety? Because we only keep kids with A's safe now? Like, how does that, right? Yeah. So it just becomes this like token of us fighting with our kids back and forth between the safety or not, or control or not, or it's the only thing you care about, so I take it away. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences. I'm all for consequences. What I'm not for is a device that chips away at the trust between you and your child. That doesn't feel good. That's not great. So we have to be very honest with our kids of saying, I'm going to give this to you. And it's for safety, but I'm never going to take it away. But what I am going to do is I'm going to roll up apps or roll up usage or roll up who you're allowed to talk to until you have a consequence. And then we're going to roll it back down. So this phone comes with 4 people to call and grandma's one of them and she misses you. You better call her, right? Mm-hmm. But then you use it great for 6 months. Awesome. We're going to roll that up, right? We're going to give you a little bit more and a little bit more. And then when you mess up, which you will because you're a kid and that's okay, we're going to take away. Call grandma again, right? Like now she wants to FaceTime with you with the phone pointing at the ceiling while you do homework or whatever you're using it for. It seems to be what all these teens use it for, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways to say yes, but with screen time. But I just think that we have missed the mark and now we're trying to fix it. And that's always harder. So if you've got a kid that doesn't have a screen yet, if you can push that back as long as you can, it's helpful.
So that would be my next question, because this is the big question, right? Of when do we give our kids a device? And I live in Silicon Valley, which it's like a huge deal. Kids have it at a young age. My husband and I have said they're not getting it anytime soon. My kids are 7 and 9. So I'm like, no time anytime soon. but kids do, and so
Well, and
you share your thoughts on that,
yeah, Amy, let's be
especially
honest.
social media, right?
Totally, totally. I'm going to tell you, I had dinner with some friends who had 3 kids, and they each got their own iPad and their own little phone, and they played games while we ate dinner. And it was the best dinner we've ever had together. Right? Like, I mean, I just want to be honest. Like, I understand the allure. I get why we want to do that. I fully understand. And yet, what we're seeing is our kids are losing their imagination because the screens are stealing it. So I had to go sit in my room without anything, and I had to like play with GI Joes and make them go to war with the teddy bear, and like what happened, and this happened, and the 18 van jumped over this, and like I had to be creative, and yet kids don't have that anymore. So we're losing that part of it. But I love the question because I get asked it all the time, and the answer is I don't know, because it's not about an age, it's about a maturity level. And so that's what we forget. And so we think, you don't get this till you're 16. I know 16-year-olds that don't deserve a device. I know 38-year-olds that don't deserve a device. And I know 9-year-olds who could use a device responsibly. So it's not about what their age is. I always ask, can they unload the dishwasher without being asked? Can they do their own laundry yet? Are they responsible for it? How are they showing responsibility in other areas that can carry over to a device? Because if we're not teaching that in any other area, and all of a sudden the first time we're expecting responsibility is with an iPad, it's not going to happen. You're giving them access to the World Wide Web, and that's so much information. That's adult level information for a half developed brain. That can only go wrong. There's no like way that goes well over long periods of time.
I absolutely agree with that. I love that you said it's the maturity level, not a specific age or any of that. And there's
Yeah.
steps, right? So you can do like a small, I don't want to call it a dummy phone, but just whatever all those steps are.
Yeah.
Where you
My
get
niece and nephew got the watches,
Yeah.
Gizmodo watches.
Yep.
I'd send them texts on it. Have a good day at school. Like, I mean, we all as a family, we all downloaded the app. We like used it. And then they just would never charge it. The allure of the technology wore off. And I think that's not a bad thing, because when it's novel and fun, that's why we need the next thing until that wears off. But if we're thinking of technology as a tool, then it becomes useful. And that's a different conversation with our kids.
Yeah. Can we also talk about monitoring our children? Because this comes in conjunction with the safety part, as well as giving our kids devices and trusting them to use them in a way that is responsible. And yet, when we monitor everything that they're doing, it doesn't necessarily communicate, we trust you, right? So,
no, it doesn't.
Balance?
And
big questions all around for you.
No. These are the ones to ask. And I'm going to give my answer. And I'm fully aware that it might make some people feel uncomfortable. And I completely understand that. If my parents would have heard every conversation I had in junior high, I would be buried at the White Tank Mountains in Arizona. That's just the answer, right?
Yeah.
So when parents want to download spyware and read every conversation to their kids' devices, you're going to get stuff you don't like. I can tell a story real quick. This is
Absolutely.
Kind of a story. I was driving home from youth group on a Wednesday night in the backseat of my parents' car, and I remember looking out the back window and I blurted out, "I swear at school." for whatever reason, I had felt convicted or whatever, and I felt I needed to share, and I wasn't making that eye contact, and I just blurted out that I like to swear at school. I was in 7th grade. My parents kind of were like, "What is happening?" So we sat on their bed and like talked about what I thought a swear word was and how often I use it, and we had a conversation about it. And so I think for me, when we talk about monitoring, that's what I'm talking about. I want parents to be the best app for their kids. I want parents to be able to have these conversations and go, "Hey, if you feel overwhelmed by what you see online, let's talk about it. I want you to talk about it." What I don't want is we let monitoring do that job for us. And then we only talk to them when we get alerts that are negative things. Then we're only having negative conversations about social media with our kids. And that, for me, that's just a recipe for causing that distrust between you and your kids. I love monitoring. I'm a part of monitoring. I suggest monitoring. However, I think there's a but, right? There's certain ones that will monitor and only alert you when they see things that you should see.
Right.
Better for me than getting everything. I don't want everything, because I also want my kid to have some autonomy and learn how to be in this world as an independent person. And I want them to say bad things. I want them to say hard things, because they're going to learn at 7th grade what the consequences are versus 22 and not caring what anybody thinks about. So I want those things to happen in the home. I want them to happen that way. Monitoring can be helpful for that. But I would say, if you don't 100% trust your kid with Instagram, maybe we don't do Instagram. You know what I mean? And I know that that is a hard line, but I think we're in a position we need hard lines now. I think the cry of our kids for mental health says we need to say no to Snapchat, say no to TikTok. If that's where our kid is obsessing and comparing and having a hard time emotionally, then we need to say no. Our kids' mental health is worth kids thinking they're lame because they don't have it. Right? Like, I know I get a lot of
likes.
Say,
oh, I didn't get enough likes, or someone didn't friend me, or
or I get like, but my kid might get bullied. And I'm like, listen, to be really fair, every kid's going to get bullied about something. And I would much rather a kid get bullied about social media not having it than having a kid get bullied and then having social media where they come home and they see that bullying happen again and again on their page, on their photos, and now they don't have any safe place to go.
Those comments can be very brutal.
It's like, yes,
things that people can't say to your face.
2 books on Amazon. I've read none of my reviews. I'm not even emotionally mature enough to read my own reviews. I'll cry in the shower. I'm not doing it.
I think I talked to a few people that have YouTube channels as well, and they said, you've made it when people leave you negative comments. So,
I mean, I don't know if that means I made it, but I just don't look anymore, because I get it. I understand. Yeah. If I'm following all these athletes on my Instagram and I'm not an athlete, I feel depressed after a while. Yeah. But I think that's also begs the question of, how can the family deal with social media as a family? So one thing I've done is I've created a motto for my social media. My motto is, I want people who see it to laugh, reflect, and grow. So every Sunday night, I look at my social media about what I've been posting, and I weed out things and I delete things that don't make people laugh, reflect, and grow. So we could come up with a family motto of what we want people to think about or experience or enjoy, or what do we want to portray to the world? What values do we want to have? And then we can work on like a family social media page that we're all doing together, so that we're learning about how to do it correctly. The biggest issue is we don't talk about it. Our kids are using it in secret and private, and they're drooling in the background. And now we have to go fix it when there's an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I really like when you shared you have a motto. Like, I do, I think in my head, but I have not, completely fine-tuned it like you could clearly, right? Like, articulate.
Well, but I also think there's a good and a bad. I don't want to overbrand a family, right? Like, then it's like this, like, look at us, we're perfect. And that's not great either, right? That's part of the problem with depression online, is I see everybody else, they look like they're doing better than me. Feel sad, so that's not great. So I don't want to overdo that. And at the same time, I don't need to share everything with everybody. My social media is not my journal. I have that. I write in it every morning. I have a therapist I talk to once a month. I don't need to share all those things on my social media, because
for the whole world.
That's not what the tool's for. Again, it's no different than a hammer. You can build a wall or you can tear down a wall. Social media is the same thing. I'm tired of tearing down walls. I want to build healthy things for people. So that's why I'm on it. That's why I use it. But I will tell you, I went to a conference in California, Google conference, where the major universities talked about their suggestion for families whose kids are going to go to college is that they start a LinkedIn for their kid at 6th grade, and it's set to private. And what you do is you upload their achievements, upload the things they do, upload how they live in the world. And then when they become a junior in high school, you make that LinkedIn public. And that's what you use for college applications.
Wow.
I am not suggesting any of us do that. I am telling you what the college recruiters are talking about right now when it comes to social media and our kids.
Wow. I actually personally do not have a LinkedIn.
No, I do, but like, I get it.
I think everybody
My
does,
dad
except for me, maybe.
as a
But
contractor.
yeah.
What?
I think everybody does, probably, except for me. But
It's just, well, and to be honest, LinkedIn was the first original social media app. But it's, if it doesn't bring light and life to you and your family, why do we need it?
right.
And so I'm learning the older I get, and maybe that's part of it. I'm becoming one of those Muppet guys in the balcony who's like, right, like, get off my lawn. I'm getting to a point where I'm like, why are we doing this? What's happening?
Yeah.
If I'm fighting about TikTok every week, we're just not going to do TikTok.
Yeah. And some of those TikTok challenges, oh my gosh, I can't even. Anyway, we could go on all day. All that stuff.
And yet, I want my kids to experience healthy things in life. So maybe if I do believe that social media is a healthy thing that I want my kid to experience, then maybe we need to experience it together, not alone. And that's the biggest issue, is our kids today are feeling alone. And that's what I want less of.
Yeah. And we want them to have the steps, right? So if we do it with them together as they grow older, they'll know how to navigate, they'll know how to make the good choices. And if it's not for them, they can cut themselves off, right?
I still separate my colors when I do my laundry. I didn't do that when I was a kid, but I learned from my family real quick. Yeah. My mom was very clear about what goes in this wash and this wash. Like, so at some point it becomes automatic. And that's really the goal for social media, is standing up for yourself, speaking health, right? Having healthy conflicts and dealing with it, communicating in a better way. Those are things we can practice at young ages, so it becomes a part of who they are. And then you can imagine the boundary setting conversations our kids can have when they're in college that I was too scared to have. Yeah. That's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give everyone a quick action or challenge that they can complete today to start making changes, and then they can ask questions or let us know how it went. Can you share your challenge for our mamas out there?
Definitely. So, I got a challenge, then I got an expert level challenge, right?
Okay. All right.
The challenge is, I want you to ask a very specific question to your kid about their day. No vague, not how was it, or what did you think, or what do you want to eat? None of that. I want it to be specific, right? If you had one thing to eat because you were so hungry and you wanted to have that as soon as possible, what would it be and why? Like, let's get really specific, whatever. That's my challenge that anyone can do, right? Ask a very specific question. Now, my master level, if you want a bigger challenge, it's, can you tonight or whenever after you see this, put away your device an hour before bed. No screens an hour before bed. I want you to try that. I just bought an alarm clock like 2 weeks ago, and I'm like trying to get all my devices out of my room.
Yeah.
I really wanted the old brown one with the red that my parents had for like 30 years, but I got a little fancier one, but that's okay.
So funny that you mentioned that, because my husband actually just got that for our kids out of his closet.
Right?
Now they have that instead of like the light up when it's time that they can come out, like the kid clock.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. I also want to share with everyone because Adam has so generously provided daily prizes that we all have, or not we all, you all have a chance to win. And they're the amazing Drive-A-Logue card packs. The blurry, there we go, that we discussed, as well as his ebook. Winners we've announced daily and are based on engagement and people taking action, because we want you to take action and make those changes that are going to impact your family's lives. So make sure to tune in. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's 3 levels. So there's a elementary school, middle school, and high school version. And I always encourage parents, when you get the cards, look through them first and see if there's anything you're like, let's wait on that. That's fine. These are age appropriate, but that does not mean that your family's ready maybe for one of these questions. There's also 4 wild cards where it's the parents' turn to answer. So make sure you look at those in advance so you're like not caught off guard.
Oh, good.
I also like to put a card that I know my kid is dealing with. I'll put it closer to the top. So it's strategic.
It's like the cards. Pick a card, pick a card. How about this one?
Right. They're dealing with, there's a card in there that says, when you feel sad and you don't know why, what do you do? And so if I know a kid's been a little more reclusive, they've closed the door a little bit more, they're not, talking, they're not sharing. It's that goes to the top of the list. And I didn't ask it. The Drive-A-Logue asked it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a fantastic tool to add to our families, and I'm really excited for it. So make sure to tune into those emails, tune into the updates in the Facebook group so that you know if you won them or not, because you need to tell me that you won them, and I know where to send them, or Adam knows where to send them.
Yeah, I'll totally send them wherever.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Thank you so much, Amy. This is so great. Obviously, I've got a little bit of passion in this area, so I get super excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and how can people connect with you further?
Yeah, you know what? You can actually, if you go to the drivealogue.com page and you just hit contact, you'll get me. You can also find me. I have my speaking and consulting website is adamleebrooks.com. You can reach out to me, find me on Instagram through Drive-A-Logue or adam.lee.brooks. I want to be a resource, so please don't hesitate to reach out. I always would hear speakers, or I would meet people and they were like, oh, let me know. And then that was it. I want to be a resource and be helpful. So I can't tell you how many emails I get from parents who are like, this is what's happening. What do you think? And so I love that kind of stuff. I want to be helpful.
That's fantastic. You can tell, you can see the passion, hear the passion.
I know, I'm trying to not
use
my hands as much, but it's real aggressive right now.
No, in a good way. I meant it in a good way.
Yeah, it's my Polish upbringing.
Anything else you want to share with our mamas before we wrap up?
Anybody, we're going to put a special code. If you want to order the cards, you'll get a discount just from this podcast, because I like Amy so much. So yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, great.
Adam, thank you so much for sharing. This is just really important information, pertinent as this day and age. So on our forever journey. Yeah.
We're not alone. We're in this together. So lean on each other. Yeah, don't think your kid's the only one messing up online. We all are. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. It's a forever journey, right? To love and equip our kids better. Everyone, go check out these products. They're amazing. And be sure to come back for more amazing summit speakers.